I thought I'd do an obligatory shop tour after seeing some comments asking questions. And I wanted to walk through the build, the layout, some lessons learned, and talk about how much it costs to build this shop. I've always enjoyed tinkering, playing with electronics, taking things apart, and trying to put them back together again. About 8 years ago, I really started to get into woodworking, and having a place to store all of my hobbies, all of my tools, all of my stuff that wasn't in the house and in our everyday face has always been something that I wanted to do. So about a year ago, in summer of 2024, I was fortunate enough that we had moved into a home with no HOA. We had enough room that we could put an accessory building on the property. And I had a supporting family that wanted me to be able to build this space so I could take all of my chaos and all of my mess out of the house, but more importantly, have a place that I could continue with those hobbies, continue to tinker, and continue to build things. And so this has sort of been the culmination of all of that. The shop is 36 feet wide, 25 feet deep, and 10-foot high walls. It's 2x4 stick construction built on site, and I've got metal siding, insulated man doors, and insulated garage doors. Even though there's no HOA where I live, I did have to meet architectural compatibility requirements from the town that I live in. So that meant matching the colors of the siding and having to pick multiple siding choices so that it was architecturally compatible with the house. It actually took quite a bit of back and forth with submitting colors, submitting design plans before the city approved to build the accessory building. When I was talking with my contractor, they were originally talking about connecting to the house power panel and pulling back a circuit for a sub panel in the shop. Unfortunately, the house is on the other side of the driveway, and that either would have meant tearing up the driveway or doing underground boring, which is going to add between $2,500 and $3,500 to the cost. It also meant I would have been limited to pulling about a 50, maybe a 60 amp circuit over for a sub panel if I was lucky. I talked to my utility, and for $435, they dropped a 200 amp service. So now I have dedicated 200 amp service for the shop, which is really nice. I worked with a contractor to build the shell of the building. They did my foundation and slab. They stick built the walls. They did sheeting and siding. They put doors and windows in. They also sheeted and shingled the roof. They set the electric meter base, and they put the panel in and did it to minimum code. So I had an interior outlet, an exterior outlet, a light, and a switch. After that, they handed me an empty building and said, have fun. Some of the fun that I got to have was doing all of the electrical work. Now, I am not an electrician, and I don't recommend anybody who's not comfortable working with electricity to do that, but it was something that I felt comfortable taking on. I've got a 2040 panel, which means I have room for 20 full-size breakers or 40 tandem breakers. And like I said, I have 200 amp service, so I got to put a lot of electrical outlets in. I've got, I believe, 26 110 outlets. I've got 6 220 outlets. I've got a disconnect for my Minisplit. I've got a future-proof 50 amp circuit for an EV charger and or a welder, sort of future-proofing. I don't have a need for that today. And I still have some room in the panel to put breakers in, and I can obviously go to tandem breakers if I need to put even more electricity in. As for right now, I am pretty good with electrical, and it's really nice to have this much capacity all to play with in a shop. The other thing I did, which has been hands down one of the best purchases I've made for the shop, is putting in a Minisplit. It's a Pioneer low ambient unit, which means that it will produce heat, I believe, all the way down to 13 below Fahrenheit. All I know is over the winter, it kept the shop completely comfortable. It was no problem to be out here working in a t-shirt or a light jacket. And so far this summer, it's done a fantastic job of keeping the shop comfortable. Today is 32 Celsius, almost 90 degrees today. And I've got the temperature on the unit set at 77 degrees. I'd have to find one of the thermometers around here, but it's probably 75, 76 in here. And usually what I do is I'll come in and turn the temperature down if I'm going to be working in here on a hot day. And within a half hour, 45 minutes, it's lowered the temperature and it's doing a great job. Highly recommend if you can put a Minisplit into a shop for both heating and cooling. It's an absolute one of the best things that you can put into your shop. The other thing I did, and I went a little overboard on, is insulation. When I decided to build it and I knew I was going to finish the inside, I decided to spend a little bit extra to really do the installation as good as I could for the size of the building. And it makes a world of difference for not a lot of extra money. All of the walls are 2x4 cavity construction, but they've got R15 fiberglass batting insulation in them. The exterior also has 1-inch rigid foam insulation under the sheathing. So I believe that's almost R3. So I'm at R18, R19 in the wall, which where I live is actually building code for dwellings, not for detached garages. I've got insulated doors. I don't remember the R value on those, but it's better than an uninsulated door. And then I did blown in cellulose insulation in the attic. I want to say I did 16 to 17 inches, which put me at somewhere over an R50. Code where I'm at for ceiling insulation, attic insulation is R48, so I'm above code, and it makes a world of difference. The Minisplit doesn't have to run hard to get the temperature consistent. And most importantly, it stays consistent. So once I'm at a constant temperature in the winter and in the summer, it really doesn't run a lot to maintain that temperature, which helps immensely with electrical bills. I tried to go overboard with the lighting in the shop. I've put in 30 4-foot long LED fixtures. The brand is Barina from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. They claim to be 40 watt, 5500 lumen lights and 6500 degree Kelvin temperature, which happens to work really well for filming, although that wasn't my motive. They do a great job of evenly lighting the whole shop, and although sometimes there's pockets on video that look like they might be dark, in real life, it's really pretty bright in here. I've got them switched so I have 3 banks. I have the far end of the shop, I have the middle of the shop, and then I have this end of the shop, so I can turn them on and off as I need. But I find 99% of the time that I'm out here, all the lights are always on. I'm a firm believer that you can't have too much lighting in a shop, and I may actually want to put more up. I originally fully planned on putting down an epoxy product on top of the concrete because I absolutely love the way that epoxy concrete looks. I had read that for best results, you really want to wait 6 to 12 months between the time that you put your concrete in and the time you epoxy, just to let any moisture escape and to let it fully cure. So I was committed to waiting, but I didn't love it. After working in the shop for a while, I realized that standing on bare concrete really friggin' hurts. Like at the end of the day, if I was out here for 6 or 8 hours, my back would be sore, my feet would be sore. That was no good. I happened to be at Costco one day and I found these rubber floor mats. They are the Mega Mat by Mohawk. It's a 4-foot by 3-foot by, I believe, half-inch thick, yes, half-inch thick rubber mat. And they were like $18 a piece. So I started by picking up 4, maybe 6 of them, and I put them down in front of tools, in front of places I would normally stand, and they were amazing. They really reduce the fatigue of standing on a hard surface. They have just enough give to them that they're comfortable, and when I was out here for hours on end, my back didn't feel like it was paying the price. So I went back to Costco and I bought a whole bunch more. I think I've got 22 or 24 total mats. I actually even have some piled up over behind the camera that I just haven't placed in and filled in spaces yet. I don't really have any heavy tools sitting on top of the mats. I've just sort of jigsaw pieced them in around things, and they've been absolutely great. They're easy to clean. It's really made the shop a lot more quiet. It's certainly a lot more comfortable, and I think it looks okay too. It also gives me the peace of mind that if I drop something, especially something that might have a blade on it, I don't have to worry about damaging what I've dropped or potentially chipping out the floor. So I've been very happy with that. I don't know that you can always find them since it was something I found at Costco, but I'll get a close-up of the product tag and I'll see if I can find a link online. I know there are a lot of options for doing flooring. This was a relatively affordable way to cover the majority of the shop floor without covering the whole floor and without spending a bundle. That was the other drawback to epoxy. The really good DIY systems are still pretty expensive, and to have a company come in and do it could have been thousands upon thousands of dollars. So, do I like the way that the epoxy looks? Absolutely. Am I happier that I have a comfortable, spongy, and tool drop resistant surface? Yes. All right, let's talk some tools, because I know that's what most of you are here to see. This is my first real big tool purchase that I ever made. It is a SawStop cabinet saw. Now it is the baby saw stop. It is a 1.75 horse, 110 volt model with the 36-inch rails. When I bought this, I thought this was going to be more a saw than I would ever need in my entire life, ever. And it has been an absolutely fantastic saw. There's not a thing wrong with it, and I love it to death. It has cut everything I've thrown at it, and it has really never bogged down. Now, to be fair, I have not been throwing 8-quarter maple and 12-quarter walnut through this thing, but it has handled plywood, it has handled hardwood, it has handled 2x4s. It's been an absolutely fantastic saw. When I first started getting into woodworking, my lovely wife bought me a little Ryobi job site saw, and that was awesome. That was a great gateway into the hobby. When I decided I wanted to get something a little bit bigger, I was looking at something a bit more budget-minded. Maybe one of the grizzly cabinet saws. I looked at some of the contractor saws that you can find at Lowe's, and my wife, in her infinite wisdom, insisted that I buy a saw stop. Her comment was, "You need your fingers to do your day job. Your day job puts a roof over our heads. I don't want you to cut your fingers off." So I spent the money, I bought the saw stop, and it has been an absolutely fantastic tool. So much so that I've got another one, but wait, there's a story behind that. I absolutely had no intention of acquiring a second table saw. But in January of this year, somebody local had posted on one of the woodworking forums where I live that they had a table saw for sale. It was a saw stop industrial cabinet saw. It had the enhanced overarm dust collection with the big 4-inch port. It had the crosscut table. It had a Jessam guide on the fence. It has this little Wixie DRO, not that big a deal, but it was a nice addition. It also included the cast iron router wing, which is actually living in my original saw. It's a 52-inch saw, and for what they were asking for it, I couldn't pass it up. They were really letting it go inexpensively because they were upgrading to a great big European sliding saw, and I happened to be right time, right place. I made an offer on it and I was able to get it. I fully intended on selling the other saw to help offset the cost of this saw. And in thinking about it, I have said it would be nice to have a dedicated dado set up. I have pestered my wife with that thought for years now. And she said, yes, you could sell the other saw. You don't really have to because you got such a good deal on this saw. What if you just kept it and made it your dedicated dado setup? So that is what I have done. And I have been fortunate enough to get an amazing deal on this. I paid full fare for the other one, but I was able to justify keeping that. So I have a regular cut saw with I just keep a regular blade in, and then I have a saw set up for dado cuts. It's really nice. I get it is an absolute luxury, and I realize how fortunate I am to have that. And that brings me to my nitpick. This outfeed table that sits between the two saws. It's a great outfeed table. I built it back in 2020 when I just had the one saw, and it did a great job. I needed something to put between the two saws, and I don't know if it is that the floor is not perfectly level or if there is ever so slightly a difference in height between an industrial cabinet saw and a professional cabinet saw, but the two saws are not exactly the same height. And the difference is pretty slight. I want to say it's less than 3/16 of an inch, maybe a hair greater than 1/8 of an inch, but it's enough. The problem is that while things will slide from this saw over with no problem coming this way, there's just a hair of a lip here, so coming from this saw across, it gets stopped here. And vice versa, I've had to raise this other side of the table. I realize you can't see me. I've had to raise this side of the table so that things will slide off and onto this saw, which means that at certain spots they catch coming from this saw across. So it needs to be fixed. As it is right now, I have it set up so that things can feed from this saw across smoothly, and when I need to make cuts over here, typically they're smaller panels, or I have to play with the leveling feet to make it so that things smoothly come across this way. It is my one complaint with this outfeed table. This is my CWI Scorpion Combo Jointer Planer. It was really the second big tool purchase I ever made. I was redoing the kitchen at our previous home, and by redoing I mean soup to nuts. We tore the entire kitchen out. I built all of the cabinets, I built all of the doors, I built all of the drawers, all from scratch. And looking at sort of the cost versus effort ratio, I was able to justify buying this 12-inch joiner planer with what it would have cost to go out and buy cabinets of the quality that we wanted to get. And then I just had to make the cabinets. This has been a great tool. It could be better, sure. The bed is a little short, but it has served me well. It came with a built-in helical head, which is really nice. And I don't have much to say that I would change with it. The only thing that I don't love, and this is not so much a fault of the tool, I think it's just a personal preference. I don't love this Euro style blade guard. I think that I like the pork chop style better. I don't know that there's any way to change it, so it sort of is what it is, but that's really the only thing that I would change if I could, is replace the Euro style blade guard with a pork chop blade guard. Otherwise, it does a good job at making things flat and square, and I don't have any complaints. This is my obligatory grizzly bandsaw. I don't think that you're allowed to be a hobbyist woodworker without having a grizzly bandsaw. So this one is mine. It cuts fine, it does bandsaw things, no complaints. Actually, one complaint, I did not get the one with the foot brake, and it takes forever for the blade to spin down. So I guess if I was to go back and do it over again, I would get the next model up that has the foot brake on it. Other than that, no complaints. This is my recently installed Harbor Freight Bauer dust collector and cyclone separator. I've got a whole series of videos if you want to learn more about that. I'll link it somewhere you can watch if you're interested in learning more about this dust collector. This is my Jet AFS 2000 air filter. I found it on an auction site locally to where I am, and I think I paid $140 for it. It didn't come with a remote control, and I had to pay $60 for a remote control. So for $210, I got a heck of an air filter. Local auction sites can be a real find for bigger tools and things like that, because I bought this from a company that was going out of business and they just needed it gone. So look around at your auction sites. This is my clapped out Craftsman drill press. I got it years ago from a guy on Facebook Marketplace. I think I paid $75 for it. It doesn't run particularly well. The chuck is sloppy. It wobbles all over the place. It does drill holes. It's what I got. I think it's worth the $75. I did get this rigid dust collection hose. So if you watched my series on dust collection, you saw me talking about it. So I'm really tickled with this. This actually makes collecting chips from the drill press work remarkably well. So at some point I will upgrade this. I don't know when, because again, I don't do that much drilling with it. When I do need to use a drill press to drill straight vertical 90-degree holes, it does a good enough job. This is my original router table. I thought about cleaning it up, but then I realized it almost always looks like this, so I figured I'd leave it for the video. It is a Craig router table. I have a Craig router lift, and it has a Bosch 1617 router in it. I got all of this off of Facebook Marketplace or possibly Nextdoor, I don't remember now. I got a pretty good deal on it, and now that I have a router in the table saw, I think I'm gonna let this go, because one of the things that I don't have enough of here is things, storage with drawers. And so I am thinking that in this space, it might be a good place to put some sort of a rolling tool cabinet. As for now, it just holds a lot of junk. I don't really use this a lot for routing, but it's fully set up and it works good enough. This is my Triton oscillating sander. I don't have a lot to say about it. It sands things. It does a fine job. It's okay, I guess. This is my wife's scroll saw. She enjoys making little crafts, and 3 or 4 years ago, she wanted to try her hand at making ornaments for Christmas and little projecty things. And so we picked up this scroll saw. It has probably been used 3 times. For the things that we've needed to use a scroll saw for, it has been absolutely invaluable. I don't know how much day-to-day utility it has. I know people who enjoy scroll sawing, scroll saw like crazy. I don't know that I am that person, and I'm not sure that my wife is that person either, but we have a scroll saw. I've got a Craig Foreman pocket hole machine, which is a bit of a luxury to have, but it is a great tool if you do much pocket hole joinery. Again, when I built the kitchen at our previous house, I was able to justify purchasing this for all of the pocket holes I used and the cost savings. And it's a luxury, but it's a nice luxury to be sure. I typically keep this set for 3/4 inch material, and then I have all of my pocket hole accessories in this quickly built little cabinet that it sits on, and then I typically keep my old Craig jig set for 1.5 inch material. I don't do as much with pocket hole joinery anymore, but I'm pretty pleased with how this little pocket hole station turned out. And like I said, having this is a nice luxury to have. If I did a lot of pocket holes, I could certainly see the appeal of getting one of the router-based pocket hole machines for really crispy pocket holes, but this does a pretty good job. And then my one lone Festool, which I don't know if that makes me a true hobbyist or not. I have an old Festool orbital sander and the little MIDI dust collector. I don't even know if you can see it down there. That is the only gray and green in the shop. This is my miter saw station, complete with upper cabinetry. The lower cabinets are all 5 years old, 6 years old now. I actually built them ahead of building the kitchen at our last house, mostly as a proof of concept to myself that I am capable of building cabinets. So that turned out reasonably okay, and I went ahead and tackled completely renovating the cabinet or the kitchen at the other house. There's nothing special about them. They are just cabinets. Some have drawers, some have open storage. They hold a Delta Cruiser 10-inch miter saw. I don't have a lot to say about the miter saw. It's a fine miter saw. The dust collection is terrible. I do have Travis at Shop Nation's dust collector chute on it. It makes it slightly less terrible, but it's still pretty terrible. These are some upper cabinets that I just recently built 3 or 4 months ago because I needed a place to put more crap. And if I open them here, you can see that they are full of crap. There is nothing special about them. I suppose there's one thing special about them. They are 42 inches high, so they are quite tall, and they hang on French cleats with no back. So I just have to be careful that anything I push to the very far back could fall out and fall down because I was saving material. This is pre-finished plywood, which I hadn't worked with prior to building these cabinets, and I have to say it is a game changer for building cabinetry. All of my prior cabinets I have either painted or finished with poly and done it with either a sprayer or by hand, and having this already pre-finished it was amazing. So you can't glue them together, but because these are shop furniture, they are all screwed, which doesn't matter if you ever see the screws on the side, and they look great. I did not bother edge banding any of them, as you can see, and these are just slab doors because it's shop furniture, and I didn't care that much. This was, I believe, 3.5 sheets of plywood. It was a pretty easy project, and now I have a place to store things and display my stupid art. This is the one drawer in my cabinet where I went way too far down the Gridfinity rabbit hole and printed all of these Gridfinity bins and filled them with stuff. It's okay, but holy cow, this took a lot of time to print. And while I feel like it looks kind of neat and impressive, my dirty secret is I didn't go far enough. I ran out of steam on this one. And by this one, I just printed the base grids. And then it gets collectively worse the further down the cabinet you go. But hey, that looks kind of neat. This is my Pulk-esque assembly table. It used to sit on a Bora centipede. It now sits on a base I made for it out of 2x4s. It is reasonably flat and it does a good enough job of holding things. It is 4 feet wide and 6 feet long because at my last house I didn't really have room to make this 8 feet long, and now I wish I hadn't have cut it down and I had the extra 2 feet. As a flat surface, it does collect a lot of garbage, and that is a problem I think every maker and shop owner has, is horizontal surfaces are where things go and die and don't get put away. But this is my assembly table. I'm just gonna kind of yada yada over the rest of the shop. I've got some sheet goods storage I built a rolling cart for. Because of the rubber flooring, this doesn't really move around so much, so it just kind of lives here. But it's a reasonably okay place because I have a door there and I have an overhead door there. I can bring sheet goods in and slot them into this. On the other side is where my lawnmower lives because I don't have a place in my garage for it, so I have to give up some of the shop. In the far corner, I have a 30-gallon air compressor with lines that run up to the outside wall. So I have a 50-foot air hose on a retractable reel there. So if I need to air up tires on bikes, on the lawnmower, or on the cars, I have an air hose right at the front of the building. And then above the assembly table, I have another 50-foot retractable air hose for tools, to blow dust off of things, all of the stuff that you would want air tools for. I've got an old clamp rack for the overflow clamps that don't fit on my French cleats. I have got some storage for totes that I built on the back wall out of 2x4s and OSB, and that's where I keep the 29-gallon Home Depot totes that are oh so ubiquitous, and they are just full of overflow stuff. I have the requisite shop fridge covered with stickers and 3D printed signs. It is full of frosty beverages. And then I have just stuff back here that doesn't really have a home. Ladders, some totes, scraps, all of those fun things. And ultimately, I can get a vehicle parked on this side of the shop if I need to get a vehicle inside, if I'm going to be out of town, or if there is inclement weather or something like that. We can get all of our vehicles in a garage, which is really nice. I've got a lot of fridge cleats on the walls, both at the front of the shop as well as the back of the shop. And I like the concept of first order retrievability. If tools are out and easily accessible, then it's easy to grab them and use them. I don't always do a great job of getting them back where they belong, but this is my effort to try. In prior places that I have lived, I've been able to consolidate my French cleat walls into a lot more of a single contiguous space. So here it's a little spread out between the front of the shop and the back of the shop. And I don't know how much that they're really doing justice to the tools on them. I keep all of my clamps back here. I have tape measures, I have some screwdrivers, I have some Allen keys and some air tools. And on the front, I have some hammers. Pardon the storm. On the front, I have some double pardon the storm. On the front, I have some hammers, I have some mallets, I have some more screwdrivers. It's a bit of a hodgepodge right now, and one of the things I really need to do is get a better system for using the French cleats. And I still have a bunch of French cleat material that I have cut up that I just haven't put up because the wall space is a little precious, and I don't want to just put French cleats everywhere and not be able to hang other things on the walls. So that's still going to be something that is an evolution as the shop grows. That's sort of an overview of the shop as it is today. The shop is about a year old. I actually broke ground with my contractor on building this in April of 2024, and they handed it over to me ready for me to do all of the work that I did in late June, early July of 2024. So what did they give me? They gave me an empty shell, and I did all of the interior work. I did the insulation, I did the OSB sheathing, I did all of the electrical, and I've added everything that you've seen since then. So the shop is effectively a year old now. As far as what's next, I'm pretty pleased with the state that it's in, and at this point I just need to get back to making projects. A few tweaks that I could see making going forward would be to the lighting. I could see adding some additional lighting to just kind of fill in some of the pockets where I wish the task lighting was a little bit better. And tool storage, like as you have seen, I did not clean up for this shop tour, and it's not the worst that it's ever been, but it's definitely messy. And I know myself, I am not great about getting things tucked away nice and neat. So some more systems for tool storage and some more discipline would go a long way, as well as some places to put it. Like I said, something I would like to get would be sort of a tool chest for some of the tools I don't need frequently, and they can have a place to live, nice and neat. So those are some things that I would like to do. Future upgrades, you know, I don't have any sort of laser cutter or engraver. I don't have any sort of CNC. I don't have a budget for one of those, but I'm very intrigued by both of those technologies. And at some point, I would love to get even a small system to play with and tinker with, but that's going to be way down the road. Possibly a bigger dust collector at some point. Again, I'm going to live with what I have for a good long time. I lived with what I had before for years, so this should serve me well. You know, the big thing is that having the space really gives me a blank canvas that is all my space. My family has been super supportive that this is the maker space for the family. It's not my space, it's the family space. I just tend to dominate it. But the family comes out here, the family putzes around in the shop, and it's nice to have the dedicated space that it doesn't have to hold a car, it doesn't have to serve double duty as storage, and it's really, I'm fortunate to be able to have this space as a pure maker space. The big question, how much did it cost? I'm not gonna give a to the penny breakdown, but I went back through and I looked at everything to get an idea of what I spent on it. And it was kind of easy to do because it's still fresh in my mind, having just started this last year. So let me give you the breakdown. So I paid a contractor to pour a foundation, pour the slab, stick frame the walls, sheathe inside the exterior, put the roof on, sheathe that, and put shingles on it, and do the code minimum electrical work, which is to set the meter base, the electrical panel, and then I needed one outlet inside, one outlet outside, a switch, and a light. They did all of that. I got my certificate of occupancy, and they turned it over to me. And I paid almost $53,000 for that. I spent another $4,000 on the concrete apron out front to tie the front of the shop into the existing drive on the property. And that is a 36-foot wide apron, so it goes across the full width of the shop. And on the long edge, it is 34 feet long, and on the short edge, it's 12 feet long, so it's kind of a little pie-shaped piece, but a good-sized piece of concrete. I paid another $4,000 for the OSB sheathing inside the shop, for all of the insulation, for all of the electrical components, the outlets, the Romex, all of that, for screws, all of those fun things. That was another $4,000. I paid $1,500 for my Minisplit. It is a Pioneer low ambient 2-ton Minisplit, and hands down one of the favorite things that I put into this shop. It has made it usable year-round and super comfortable. I know that the Mr. Cools are all over MakerTube and shop channels, and they will have you believe that you have to put a Mr. Cool in if you're going to DIY it. But that is absolutely not true. You can DIY a lot of these mini splits. The only thing that you need that Mr. Cool has solved for in an interesting or unique way is how you pull a vacuum on the line set. And for $100, you can go to Harbor Freight and you can get a vacuum pump and you can do it yourself. They all come pre-charged with more than enough coolant and refrigerant to do all of your standard installs. So DIYing the mini split, you can save big money. Anyway, that puts me all in about $62,000 to build the shop. Again, it's 36 feet wide, it's 25 feet deep, it has 10-foot ceilings, and I am super grateful to have that space. Interestingly, as I was putting this script together, Travis at Shop Nation came out with his shop tour and build cost video. And to be fair, he has an absolutely fantastic shop. He paid $280,000 to build his shop. He had about $30,000 in sponsored material, equipment, and supplies, but that still puts him all in at $250,000. So it is very expensive to build a shop. Even a bare bones shop like this is a lot of money. One of the things that I wasn't able to put in that I kind of wish I would have been able to, but there was just no good way to do it, is to put plumbing in. So down the road, I could add a bathroom or a slop sink. And that sadly just wasn't in the cards with the way that the shop location was, and I would have to tie all the plumbing into the house. So that's a limitation, something to fix if I ever build a new shop in a new place, but I don't see that happening. Anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed this video. If you've liked what you've seen, I would be happy to ask you to subscribe to the channel and get notified for new content. Otherwise, I certainly hope that you've learned something and enjoyed the video.